We're joined today by attorney Mike Papantonio. He's also co-host of Ring of Fire Radio. The topic is the politicizing of science reporting on corporate media. Pap, I've been covering this for years, and the old faithful story, faithful example we have on this is, of course, that of the reporting of climate science, right? In spite of a scientific consensus about 97 to 3% that human activities on Earth are influencing climate, broadly speaking, corporate media insists on this 50-50 false balance that seems to be very popular. Do you think that the desire for this coverage is fear of repercussions from the right wing if they cover it in a different way? Or is it simply that that type of coverage draws more viewers for corporate media?
It's mostly about money, really, when you drill down on what this is about. When you're a network and you have Exxon and you've got Shell Oil and various energy industries advertising, spending $10-12 million a year with you. You go out of your way to at least say, you know, we told the other side of the story, notwithstanding how ridiculous it was. When I was in journalism school back at University of Florida, David, there was already a concern of what was happening to corporate journalism. First of all, it was the corporate problem that people were worried about. Of course, back then, when I was in journalism school, you had about 50 or almost 60 independent organizations that owned the media. But nevertheless, they were talking about what's going to happen when all that's gobbled up and you have 5 corporations that are determining what a producer may put on the air, what an anchor might say, what's going to happen. Isn't it going to be driven by money? That was the first concern everybody had. And then the second concern that has developed in the last few years is journalists have evolved into what we call need to know. We're seeing an entire generation emerge that has grown up on need-to-know testing. It was been testing. It's not a matter, did they read Steinbeck? Did they read Conrad? Did they read Hemingway? Did they read Kafka? It's not a matter of what their foundation is for a broad education. It is, did they know how to pass a test? And so even at the journalism, the reporting level, we're seeing that. And we're seeing it at the producer level. Now, there are some wonderful producers that I work with almost daily. They're brilliant. They are brilliant. But that's not the norm. The norm of the producers that we see moving into the area come from that need-to-know kind of journalism. It's a background that does not lend itself to understanding how important it is to do your due diligence on a story as basic, as overwhelming as climate change. And then to say to the people in charge, you know, I've got to tell the story, and if you won't allow me to tell the story, I have to have enough character to go somewhere else where they will let me tell the story. So there's a lot of moving parts here, David, and I don't see it getting better in any sense of the word.
No, it's hard to imagine it getting better because, look, we interviewed the Fox News mole, Joe Muto, and he was pretty upfront in saying that, you know, Fox News had a lot of liberals, a lot of atheists, all sorts of lefties that work there, but they're very clear during the interview process. They basically say, are you going to play along here? This is what you're going to be expected to do. And if you have this kind of cascading directive that you either play the part or there's no spot for you, it's hard to imagine that ever really changing unless you upend the entire structure.
Well, the guys on the 50th floor, in the MBAs that they have no allegiance to telling the truth journalistically. Their only allegiance is to how do we increase the bottom line.
Although I have an MBA and I try to tell the truth, so I hope you're not talking about me too, right?
I'm not. But the guys on the 50th floor in most corporate settings that involve the media are making bottom line decisions. Let me give you an example. For example, a very good example. I could probably call ABC News, and I could say, you know what? There's a new product that's on the market. It's a product produced by, let's just say, Pfizer or Merck, and it's killing 100 people a day. And oh, by the way, I have documents that show that the company intentionally put the product out there knowing what the danger was. Now, what would happen there is I would give the story to a producer. And the producer would talk to me, oh, this is huge. Can we talk to the client? Yeah, we'll talk to the client. and then this story will sit around another month or so, and then it'll get to the next level of producer, and we got to, we have to do our due diligence. Well, the only due diligence that was taking place in a setting like that was, what do the guys on the 50th floor say? Can we talk about Merck? Merck is an $8 million a year advertiser with us. Can we talk about Pfizer? So corporate journalism has ruined the ability of journalists to even go through the motions of telling the truth by way of due diligence. Now, any journalist can read. I mean, you hope they can read, and you hope that they can see the overwhelming information that's coming out of something as basic as what you're talking about, the climate change. They can read the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They can read dozens and dozens of government works. They can read, the insurance industry's own work where it talks about we have to adjust because climate change, man-made, is killing us. They could do that, but they're not allowed to, okay? And so this never gets any better. Now, BBC, think about what they did, David.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a bold move by BBC, wasn't it?
Yeah, BBC decided, and we covered this, it was either earlier this week or last week, they've said, as our policy, we're not going to do the false balance thing on climate change. We believe the science, which is that there is a consensus, and journalists are actually being instructed not to do the false balance thing when it comes to climate change. Do you think, though, that the corporate structure of BBC is what has allowed this to happen? In other words, could we really imagine a major American media corporation making the same decision?
Oh, it would never happen. It would never, ever happen. That's why the best equivalent I can give you that exists to BBC in the United States is the broad expanse of citizens media. Now, I know you're of the opinion that the citizens media still has not risen to the point to where it can balance out all the harm that's done by corporate media. But nevertheless, people's knowledge about what happens these days has to come from citizens media. When you look at the numbers are staggering. There was a report that came out that the United States leads the entire nation, the entire world in climate change denial.
Right.
In the United States, the last report was that 54% of Americans, a mere 54%, agree with the fact that climate change has taken place and that it's man-made. If you go to China, for God's sakes, China, the number is 93% of that population believes that climate change is taking place. So how has that happened? It's happened because of these false equivalents. And I used to call them false equivalents, but it's really beyond, it's design. And the design is not that we want to tell the lie about climate change if you're a producer or a writer. It is that we have to please the MBA on the 50th floor because we like our job. It's the Phil Donahue effect. When Phil Donahue showed courage on something like Iraq, he lost his job. We see that happening constantly now, since you have only 4 major organizations, or 5 at the most, that control all of the media, whether it's magazines, newspapers, radio, TV, and that continues to get worse. So we're never going to see a correction to the what I call the climate change ridiculous scenario we saw play out with climate change. But we also saw it, if you think about it, we also saw it with the Roberts court decision, where the media didn't have enough sense to distinguish the difference between a contraceptive and an abortion.
Yeah, I was going to get to that example next, because that's a specific one that's not just happening all the time, which is corporate media did not clearly say what the plaintiffs call abortion medications, according to science, are not that. It's just a one-sentence clarification, and we just didn't get it.
Well, it's you know what? They didn't want to get it. They didn't want to get it because it was an easy. You see, it's an easy delivery. It's an easy delivery. You have the crazy right out there who the media is terrified by. They're so damned afraid that the crazy right is going to say that they're not being balanced, that they're biased. They can't let that go. I mean, they just can't get that out of their head. And so when the crazy right says something like that to CNN, for example, who is they have no definition at all. I mean, CNN is a network that has no definition, and they're afraid of everything. but they're mostly afraid of the crazy right. So if you watch their reporting on this, CNN never distinguished with the fact that an abortion is much different than a contraceptive pill. The contraceptive pill is a blocker to fertilization. Abortion is when we have a fertilized egg that we go in and abort, a fetus that we abort. But that's too difficult for them, because it's easier to deliver the idiot story. The ACA, isn't that another great example? I mean, look at how bad the media botched ACA. Hell, that most legislators didn't even know what ACA was about. They didn't understand what the Obama health care program was about because the damn reporters couldn't understand what it was about. I had people on our show that should have known, where I'm interviewing them. Well, now let's talk about this aspect of Obama's health care plan, and they simply didn't know. These are people who report every day, David. And it's scary.
It's incredible. And we also saw CNN, when it comes to definitions, they bowed down to the right when it came to redefining what a school shooting is. Remember that CNN reported, yes, here's the number of school shootings, and the right said, whoa, just because it happened at a school doesn't mean it was a school shooting, and CNN actually caved to that.
Yeah, well, we all knew. I forgot the cat's name that took over CNN. It was an embarrassment. They got rid of him at one network because he did such a poor job, and he came in there to try to save CNN. And he said the first thing he did, if you'll remember, when I forget his name right now, but it was the leadership basically of CNN. The first decision that they came out with was, we have to stop allowing basically social media people on the air, such as radio people that do what you do or what I do. And the reason is they wanted to avoid controversy at all costs. That's why when you watch CNN, it's like watching the rain fall. It's like watching paint dry, because that's what they were after. They wanted that non-confrontation in every regard, and that's what they've got.
They certainly have. We've been speaking with attorney Mike Papantonio, co-host of Ring of Fire Radio. Don't miss Ring of Fire on Free Speech TV as well. Thanks as always for being with us.
Thank you, David.